Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name is Rochelle from Rochelle.Handmade.Designs, and in this video, this is the first video in the So What series. Yes, it is finally here. You heard me introduce this series. If you looked at my sewing plans a few days ago, I introduced this new series that I'm doing, which is called the So What series. So you asked, what is the So What series? So the So What series is basically small projects that you can do every few weeks. I have spaced them. I will be spacing these out quite a bit. Reason being is because it is a pattern that you can do. It's not much of a lot of self-drafting, but some things you can self-draft and make it your own, okay? So it's not a lot of self-drafting, but it's patterns that you wouldn't have thought to pick up, or you wouldn't have thought to have sewn them so quickly, okay? So this video is all about the envelope pillows. So because I decided that I want to go ahead and put some new covers on my pillows or for my couch. So what I'm going to be doing in this tutorial is sewing 3 different pillowcases, okay? Now, I am creating a total of 6, but I am doing the 3 pillows twice. I don't need to show you all 6 pillows. However, I'll take a picture of the couch once it's ready, okay? So before we get started, go ahead and hit the like button and the subscribe button, but also turn on the notification bell so you are notified every time I upload a new video. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right on into the first project in this So What series, which is Simplicity 8226 9402, or you can use Quick Sew 4294. This is project number 1, the envelope pillows. All right, so this is the next tutorial that I am doing, and this is for envelope pillows. So I'm gonna move the fabric out the way right quick and then show you. So this tutorial is for Simplicity 8226, which is the envelope pillow. And if you look at my sewing plans, I said that I am planning on doing view A and view C. And then what I'm going to do is self-draft another pillow for a third pillow, but I am going to use the pattern pieces of A and then just basically draw on some other stuff and add some good feel for it, okay? To it, okay? But if you do not have Simplicity 8226, there was 2 other patterns that you could pick up that's essentially the same thing as this one, which was Simplicity 9402 or Quick Sew 4294. All right, so now that I told you which pattern it was, I'm gonna show you the fabric before I get into more details about this pattern, okay? So I picked up some fabrics from Joann's, and one of them was already in my stash. The other ones was from Joann's. I had to purchase more fabric because the other ones just was not what I wanted for my couch, okay? So this one is marble. This was already from my stash. I'm not sure how much I have of this fabric, but I'm going to lay it out and then decide how much I have, and I will put it up on the screen once I measure this out, okay? So I'm gonna measure, I'm gonna put it on the screen, don't worry, okay? So I am using this fabric right here. I am using this for view A of the pillow. So once again, I'm gonna use it for view A, this one right here of the pillow. This will be the front portion of my pillow. So the front will be this one, and then the back I'm going to use like a solid black. That's what I plan on doing. All right. Now, I also picked up an additional 4 fabrics or 5 fabrics from Joann's. Okay. And I'm going to tell you what this will be here shortly. But I want to show you view C. So view C is this one right here, where you have the red and white diamond or triangles, right, on the front, and then the back is just solid. Now, my vision for this one is for the white, I am going to use the marble that I just showed you. And then for the red right here, I am going to use this fabric right here. Okay. Now this is also from Joann's. And this fabric is called Quick Sew Calico Cotton Fabric Mini Cross Hatch. I'm going to put the fabric number up. I actually purchased 1.5 yards. I wanted to have more than enough just in case, because you never know. And with my last project I cut out, I didn't have enough for the sleeves, so I had to purchase some more fabric. So this time around, I just purchased an extra ½ a yard of fabric to make sure I have enough. Now, on the website and on the bulk, it says that this, the number, if you are interested in this fabric, the number is 1670411. So I will also put this up on the screen if you are interested in this fabric. I purchased this 1.5, and like I said, I will be doing view C. This fabric will be used for view C, and it's where you see the red, which is the contrast fabric. This will be used also again for the pillow that I will be self-drafting here shortly. Okay, so this is called the Keepsake Calico Cotton Fabric Mini Cross Hatch. Okay, that's this one. The next one that I picked up is this one. Now this is called Dot White. I think it's a Keepsake one as well. It's this one right here. Now on this one, I picked up 1 yard of this, and this one will be used for the self-draft pillow, envelope pillow that I am doing. I'm going to be using this one for both the front and the back. And it's hard to kind of see it through the camera, but it does have dots on it, and you will see it once I start sewing with it. The next one that I picked up is a Galaxy one. This one will also be used for the self-draft pillow as well. Now this one is called Galaxy Gray, and it's also a Keepsake Calico Cotton fabric as well. And I purchased 1.5 yards of this fabric. And I'm only telling you how much I purchased just in case you want to do your pillows the exact same way that I'm doing, but feel free to do whatever you want with your pillows, because it's going on your couch, or you giving them to somebody or something. Okay. And the last fabric that I am going to be using for my self-draft pillow is the, this one is called, I believe it's called Graphic Gray. And I picked up 1 yard of this fabric, and this will be used as my self-draft pillow as well. Okay. Now anything that's left, you could always make another pillow. Now I'm making a total of 6 pillows, but in this tutorial, I'm going to show you 3 pillows that I am going to make. Okay. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the pattern instructions. So for this tutorial, and for this pattern, like I have said previously, I am doing view A and view C. So for view A, you only need 2 pattern pieces. You need pattern piece number 1 and pattern piece number 2. So pattern piece number 1 is your front, and pattern piece number 2 is your back. Now for view C, you also need 2 pattern pieces. You need pattern piece number 3, which is your front and your back. And then you also need pattern piece number 5, which is your contrast front. All right, which is pattern piece number 5 for this one. Okay, so you would essentially need to cut out 4 pattern pieces. That would be pattern piece number 1, 2, 3, and 5 in order to construct view A and view C. Now, to talk about the instructions, when I say this is pretty much easy, all you're going to do is for pillow A, you're going to take whatever you cut for the front and the back. You're going to right sides together, stitch using a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance along the bottom, up the side, along the top, and back down. You will also leave about a good, I would say 2-inch opening in order to turn the pillow right side out. Okay. Then once you turn the pillow right side out, we're going to go ahead and do some top stitching and things of that sort. So you'll see when you see the tutorial. Okay. Now moving over to pillow C. This is the corner. So you're going to make a 4-corner section of your pillow front by stitching 1 front to 1 contrast front. So you'll stitch one of your main fabrics to the contrast fabric and a 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. You'll press it open and then attach all of them. Once you get them all together, you will attach the front to the back like you see in step number 4 and create your pillow. There's only 5 steps to view C, and then view A, there's only 4 steps. So this is a quick sew. All right. So now that is the pattern, which you can use Simplicity 8226, Simplicity 8402, or Quick Sew 4296. Okay. Now that I talked about the instructions and the pattern, the only thing that you will need for your pillows is coordinating thread. Okay, you do not need any notions whatsoever other than your pillow form. If you're going to use a pillow form, or you could use some polyfill, but the only notion that you need in order to construct these pillows is just thread. You need some pens, and that's it. Now, however, I am inserting zippers in mine. So for the zippers, I will be using 12-inch zippers, and I will be creating 3 different pillows. So of course, I have 6 of these zippers that I will be creating. However, I will show you how to add a zipper into your pillows. I'll be adding mine at the bottom of my pillow. You could definitely add it to the back. You could add it to the side. You could add it to the bottom. That's completely up to you. That's a personal preference, but I'll show you how to add it to the bottom of your pillow. Okay. Now that I talked about that, let's go ahead and get into the self-drafting portion of the pillow that I will be self-drafting. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right. So for the self-draft pillow, what we are doing is I am going to trace this entire front for view A. I'm going to trace around this pattern piece, front A, and the back for front A, okay? Now, on the pattern, it says that this is for 18 by 18 inch pillow. However, if you want 16 by 16 inch pillow, you just need to make sure that your box is 17 by 17 inches. So if you are creating a 16 by 16 inch pillow or using a 16 by 16 inch pillow form, make sure that your entire square or box is 17 by 17, and make sure you take out the seam allowance to essentially you will have 16 by 16 once you remove the seam allowance. Now, what that means is basically create a box that's 16 by 16, add in a 1/2 inch seam allowance around the entire pattern. Reason being is because seam allowance is at 1/4 of an inch, but you have to do 1/4 of an inch for the front and 1/4 of an inch for the back, which makes that a 1/2 inch. 1/4 plus 1/4 is a 1/2 inch. So that's why if you measure this pattern piece out, you will come out with 19 inches across, 19 inches up and down. If you do 16, you will come out with 17 inches across, 17 inches up and down, okay? So just to give you an idea of why, when you measure, you have something a little different, okay? That's why. Now, I have started the drafting, and I have done half of this because I want to show you the other portion on camera, okay? So what I need you to do is go ahead and get your ruler. So I have 2 rulers. I have this one, which is the 3-inch ruler, and then I have my clear see-through ruler, okay? So I will be using my clear see-through ruler because I feel like it would be a little easier. Now, it may be hard for you to see the numbers at the bottom of mine, but I have 2 different sizes for a reason. So the green lines right here is what I traced out of the pattern, which is the 18 by 18 inch pillow. For the 16 by 16 inch pillow, it's what you see in the purple right here. So this is the purple line. Now, what I want to say is this. What we are doing is we are creating diagonal lines, and we're going to, that's why you see 5 different fabrics, because I am going to place the fabric on the diagonal line and then stitch them together onto the pillow, okay? Now, one thing that I want to say for this pillow is basically I need you to make a couple of dots, okay? So you're going to make the dots. Whatever you make at the bottom, you will make at the top. Whatever you do to the side, one side, you'll do to the other side, okay? So at the bottom, in order to make the lines, you will create so many lines, okay? So start at, now if you're doing a 16 by 16 inch pillow, this is what you want to do. 16 by 16. If you are doing a 16 by 16 inch pillow, make your first dot at 1 1/4. Just make a dot. Make your second dot at 4 inches. All right. Make your next dot at 6 3/4. Make your fourth dot at 9 3/8. Make your fifth dot, fifth and last dot, at 12 inches. Okay? So you should have 5 dots, and the first one should be at 1 1/4, the second one at 4, the third one at 6 3/4, the fourth one at 9 3/8, and the fifth one at 12 inches, okay? Now, what we just did to the bottom, we're going to do the exact same thing to the top. However, you want to turn it around to where this portion is facing you and mark the same numbers that you just did on the other side, okay? So you're gonna do 1 1/4, 4 inches, 6 3/4, 9 3/8, and 12 inches along this purple line. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so welcome back. We are going to be sewing some pillows. So one of the pillows that we are sewing is a pillow that's going to be drafted, okay? Now, I highly advise you to go check and see how big your pillow for your couch is. But I am just going to make my pillow on this one a 16 by 16 inch for the pillow form, okay? So I'm going to make a line. Now I'm going to call it the X and the Y axis. The X goes across, the Y goes up and down. You can tell because math, right? All right, so along the bottom, the length, or left to right length, you want to make a line 16 inches long. So go ahead and make a line 16 inches long. So I'm going to make it to where you could see it, okay? So I'm going to make my line roughly about here so you can see it. But I also want to be sure that you can see the entire square, okay? So I'm going to make it a little far down. You may not be able to see it, but you'll be able to see it once I'm done with it. So I'm going to make a line 16 inches long. And now I am using a marker to show you this, but please make sure you are using a pencil and then you could darken it with a marker, okay? All right, so I made a line 16 inches long. You're not going to be able to see this, but you will once I finish drawing my other lines. Also make a line up and down 16 inches as well. And make sure you have your ruler straight. So use a straight ruler. All right. And then close out your box, making another line 16 inches up and down and 16 inches straight across. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so I have a rectangle 16 inches by 16 inches. Now I have my paper taped down to my mat, so I'm able to draw without it moving and shifting on me, okay? So now I'm gonna move this up so you can see. Now, because it's 16 by 16, you're not gonna be able to see, but I want you to see the bottom. So I'm gonna move it up to where you can see the bottom portion of my square, okay? And then I'm gonna tape it back down to my mat. Now, for this design, we are making diagonal lines, okay? And what you're going to do is make sure you have at least 9 strips of fabric in order to put on the pillow to kind of do a color block and a contrast, okay? So what I want you to do is along the bottom line, you need to measure out 1 1/4. So from this corner right here, where we could call it the origin or whatnot, you want to measure to the right 1 1/4 and make a dot. All right, now also from the same line, you're going to keep your ruler there. Now make a dot at your 4-inch mark. The third dot make at 6 3/4. The next dot you want to make at 9 3/8. So if you are using a, they call it the giant inch, which means that you have 16 dots. So I'm just going to say this real quick. If you are using this, if you're looking for 3/4, that would be the 10th. So after you look for the half, go over 2 more slash and it'll give you 3/4. If you are looking for 1/4, you go over 2. If you're looking for 4, so basically you can make those marks yourself. Just make sure if you are using a 16-inch ruler, you measure correctly, okay? So just make sure you are measuring the dots correctly, okay? So measure out 9 3/8 is the next one that you need to do. Okay. After you do 9 3/8, make a dot at 12. And that's all the dots that you need to make. So I'm going to write this on the bottom portion. So the first dot is at 1 1/4. The second dot is at 4 inches. The third dot is at 6 3/4. The fourth dot is at 9 3/8. And the last dot is at 12 inches. Now, you know the corner over here is at 16 inches, okay? Now, you can measure the dots the same way at the very top. Whatever you did at the bottom, do at the very top. It'll make it easier when you go to connect the lines, okay? Now, what I'm going to do is go ahead and turn my paper to the side. So I'm just going to flip it to where now those lines is off to the side, all right? Now, what I need to do is flip it to where I am using where the roll is because it's still on a roll. So I'm going to go ahead and take it off the roll. Now I'm able to move my paper around like I want, okay? So now I'm going to take where I marked these dots. I'm going to turn it to where those are on the side now. Now I'm going to put some tape down so I'm able to work with the top and the bottom of my paper, okay? All right, so now that I have my pattern paper taped back down, let me put a couple of more pieces. All right, so now that I have the pattern taped back down or my paper taped back down to finish my pattern, now along this bottom line that I have, I need to scoot it up for you to see it. All right, so now that I have it turned, what we're going to do is mark dots along the bottom line, okay? So now that I have the numbers on this side, now we're going to mark along the bottom. Now, the numbers are not the same, okay? So the first marking that you want to make is at 4 inches. So basically, you're going to mark the same dots, but you're going to leave off the 1 1/4. So the first one you want to mark is at 4 inches, okay? So we're going to mark along this line, mark at 4 inches. The next dot you want to make is at 6 3/4. The next dot you want to make at 9 3/8. The next dot you want to make at 12 inches. And the last dot you want to make at 14 5/8. All right. So I'm going to mark all of my lines along this line. So the first one was made at 4 inches. The second dot was made at 6 3/4. The third dot was made at 9 3/8. The fourth dot was made at 12 inches. And the last dot was made at 14 5/8, okay? Now, what we're going to do is you want to connect this dot where you have 14 5/8. You want to connect that with the first dot that you made at 1 1/4. You want to connect the 4 and the 12, the 6 3/4 with the 9 3/8, the 9 3/8 with this 6 3/4, and then the 12 with the 4, okay? So I'm going to take my ruler and I am going to connect these lines, okay? So go ahead and collect your lines. So I'm going to connect the 4 to the 12, just like this. I'm going to connect the 6 3/4 with the 9 3/8 on the side. I'm going to connect this 9 3/8 with this 6 3/4. Now, if your ruler is not long enough, just go ahead and get you a long enough ruler so you're able to make one solid line. Right? Now, I'm going to connect this 4 with this 12. And I'm going to connect this 4 5/8 with that 1 1/4. Now, I have to get my longer ruler because my ruler does not allow for that marking, okay? All right. So this is what you currently have. Now you have to do the same thing to this side. So all you do is turn it around, and the same numbers that you have here, you would plot on the other side. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my other lines done on the opposite, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and cut out this all the way around in here in just a second. But I'm going to try to bring it up so you're able to see what it looks like, and I'll tell you what I did. So basically, I finished mine, and what I did is basically at the bottom, just to recap, starting from 0, you're going to measure out 4 inches, 6 3/4, 9 3/8, 12, and then 14 5/8. So while you have your ruler on the line, you're just going to make the dots that I just mentioned. One at 4, one at 6 3/4, one at 9 3/8, one at 12, one at 14 5/8, and then mark your 16 inch. Then going up and down, you're going to mark at 1 1/4, 4, 6 3/4, 9 3/8, 12, and then 16, okay? Now, you're going to flip it and do the same thing on the opposite side, okay? And do the exact same thing. Now, these diagonal lines right here should measure 2 7/8 all the way across. So I would put a note, if I were you, 2 7/8 across. Now, what you're going to do is you have two options. You can cut a strip of fabric as in bias tape. Like if you're doing bias tape, you would normally cut a strip of fabric like bias tape, right? And I'll show you this here shortly, but you could cut it like bias tape, but make sure that your strips are 2 7/8. Now, you have the option of using different color fabrics, which is what I will be doing for mine. I will be using different color fabrics for mine. Now that means that I am going to use about 5 different contrast fabrics, 5 different fabrics in order to create my pillow. You could use 9, you could use 4, you could use 2. You don't have to use any if you choose to. But you have two options. You could either measure out 2 7/8 as in strips, or you could cut each one individually at 2 7/8. But I need you to keep this guide, because what you will do is each strips you will be placing on this dotted line right here. Well, it's not dotted, but you will be placing it on the line. So what I want you to do is measure out how long that line is, which it should be 3 inches, okay? So this line right here, from here, this line to this line right here is actually 3 inches, okay? Roughly about 2 7/8 to 3 inches. So what you're going to do is when you sew on your strips, you're going to sew it on the line. Now you should be sewing 10 strips. So you'll sew 1 line, 2 line, 3, 4, 5, and so forth and so on, right? So now the first thing I want you to do is go ahead and do a 1/2 inch ease all the way around your pattern. So I'm going to mark a 1/2 inch ease all the way around my pattern. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my seam allowance added to my pattern, you are ready to go ahead and cut it out. But before you cut it out, what we're going to do is label our pattern. So you want to label your pattern pillow. Well, first I'm going to mark my grain line. So just make your grain line up and down is what you want to do. Excuse me. So you're going to mark a grain line. I'm just going to make mine about right here. Make sure your ruler is straight. Mark your grain line. And you're going to label your pattern, or the drafting that you just did. You're going to label pillow cut 2. And that's it. Okay? Now what you're going to do is cut all the way around twice. So you're going to have one for the outside, one for the front, and one for the back of your pattern. And then just make sure that when you get ready to cut your strips, you are doing a measurement of 2 7/8, and you're going to need 10 different strips. So go ahead and cut out your fabric, and go ahead and make your strips now. Now I also want to say one thing. Now, some people may want a zipper in order to pull their pillow in and out. That's completely up to you. If you want to have a zipper in the back of your pillow or on the side of your pillow, all you have to do is, before you add that seam allowance, add 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then add the 1/2 inch. So where you have that 1/2 inch seam allowance right now, go ahead and add 5/8 of an inch seam allowance to wherever you want to have your zipper. Okay. So let's just say that my stripes are going to go this way, and I want my zipper to be on the side instead of in the back, right? In the center back. I don't want it in the center back. I want it on the side. So what I would do is definitely make 5/8 of an inch seam allowance on one side, and then cut all the way around, but you're only going to have 5/8 of an inch seam allowance added to one side seam in order to do a zipper at the very bottom or the side of your zipper, of your pillow. Now let's say that you want it in the center back. Now this is what I would highly suggest. I would suggest that you transfer all of your lines, cut out the front. After you cut out the front, slash, and then you want to add your 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So when you slash, that means that what you're going to do is slash and add 5/8 of an inch seam allowance to one side seam, which would be your front or your back. So basically, I'm not going to slash it, but I'm going to show you what you would need to do by using a pencil, okay? Now, you can do this if you would like. So what I would do if I wanted a center back zipper, let me grab a pencil. I would cut out one pattern piece for the front. I would also cut out my strips. And then, so this pillow is 6 by 6. So you want to make a line in the very center of it, which would be at 8 inches, okay? And then at that 8-inch mark, you want to make a line all the way across. Okay? Now, what I'm going to do is fold this in half, though, because I don't need the entire pillow. I'm going to fold it in half. And you could do this to make it easier as well. All right. So if you cut it in half, you're only going to have one strip, but I'm just folding it in half. And what you're going to do right here on this fold edge, you're going to take you a piece of paper. So I'm just taking me a piece of paper that you can see. I know it says 2022 on there. Okay. And what I'm going to do is make a line 5/8 of an inch from that section. So basically, I'm just going to make a line. I put up my see-through ruler. So I'm going to make a line all the way across 5/8 of an inch. And now this becomes my new cutting line. So instead of cutting, I would cut right here, but I would cut this on the fold, okay? So you would cut this strip on the fold. You already 5/8, I'm sorry. You would cut this all the way around, not on the fold. I just have mine folded. You would cut it all the way around and you would have two pieces. You would have 5/8 of an inch added for your zipper, okay? So that's what you would have to do if you would like a zipper in the back of your pillow. So go ahead and do all of those things now, and I will meet you back here for the sewing. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the next tutorial, the first pillow. Now you have three options that you can use, like I have said previously. You can use Simplicity 8226 or Simplicity 9402 or Quick Sew 4294. The instructions are the same. The pattern pieces is the same. It's just they have reissued this pattern so many times, okay? So I'm going to be using 8226 because I do not have the other two patterns in my set. Actually, I do have the 9402, but because this one is already out of print, I might as well just use the out of print one instead of the new one, right? All right, so since we are doing view A, this is the first pillow. I will be doing 3 in this sew along. So go ahead and grab pattern piece number 1 and 2. And when I say it's only 4 steps to this first pillow, it's only 4 steps. So pattern piece number 1 is your front. You need to cut 2 of fabric. So let me show you that. This is pattern piece number 1. You need to cut 2 of fabric. And then pattern piece number 2 is the back for view A, and you need to cut 2 of fabric. Now I have 2 separate color fabrics, of course, because I want to have a contrast on the back of my pillow. Another thing you will notice is your back pattern piece is bigger than your front pattern piece. It's supposed to be like that, okay? So don't worry about that, okay? So now take pattern piece number 1, move pattern piece number 2 out of the way. And I have already started doing this, so just follow along, all right? So on pattern piece number 1, which is your front, with right sides together, you want to pin all the way around your front. And then just leave like, I want to say this is roughly about 5.5 to 6 inches for your hand. And the reason why is because you're going to need to open it and turn it out, okay? So now what I'm going to do is, because I have pinned all the way around my pillow case, all right, pillow case, I have left about a 6-inch opening at the bottom for my hand to reach inside and pull it out. Now I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and for this pillow, the seam allowance is 1/4 of an inch. So using 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, I'm going to back stitch at this pin, sew all the way around, making sure when I get close to the edge, I'm going to lift my presser foot up and pivot, and sew all the way around your pillow until I get to this end. Once I get to this end, I'm going to back stitch. So make sure you back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Once you do that, you're going to turn your pillow right side out and then close that little edge right here. Okay, so go to your sewing machine, and you're going to do this for both your front and your back, leaving that opening at the bottom for you to turn out and give it a press and then slip stitch. Go ahead and do that now. Okay, so before you go to the sewing machine, I want to make one correction. The seam allowance for all seams is a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So go to the sewing machine and sew all the way around your front and your back using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then go ahead and pull it through from the opening at the bottom, okay? So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have went to the sewing machine, I have sewn my front and my back. Now, what you need to do is go ahead and trim your corners, okay? Now, I'm going to trim all 4 of my corners. Make sure you do not cut your stitching, okay? So do not, when you cut your corners, do not accidentally cut the stitching of your corners. So cut your corners. I'm just going to cut like a diagonal right here for my corners, but do not clip through your stitching because you will have a hole in your pillow. Do that for the front and also for the back. So I'm going to do it for the back as well. All right, so now that I have the corners cut, trimmed or whatever. Now what you're going to do is go ahead and through that opening, go ahead and reach your hand in and pull the pillow right side out. So do that for your front and for your back. Give it a press and then slip stitch that opening close, just like so. Okay. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my front and back sewn together, I went ahead and pulled it out, gave it a press. So now if you notice that you see like a line all the way across. Now you should have transferred this stitching line, which should have been 2 inches when you first cut out your pattern. So now because you stitch a 1/2 inch seam allowance, this should be 1 1/2 from the edge, okay? Now, your front and your back. Now, I have right sides together. So this means that I have a box on the wrong side. And then if you look on the side with the black, you see I have a stitching line as well. Now, what you're going to do is pin around your pillowcase on the stitching line, and you're going to sew along the stitching line and then leave an opening so you could turn out, and then you'll go ahead and insert your pillow. Once you insert your pillow, you're going to slip stitch that close, and then you're done with your pillow. Now, one thing that I want to say about this is one of the pillows that I will not be adding a zipper to. So after I sew this together, one thing that I will make sure to do is to wash my pillow because I do not want these blue lines all the way around my pillow, okay? So that's what I would highly suggest you do, but go ahead and pin all the way around, leaving a good, I'm gonna say about a good 4 inches for you to stick your pillow in. Make sure it's big enough for you to stick your pillow in, okay? Once you do that, you are all done with your pillow. All right, so this is the second pillow as part of this project 1. So what series? We are now doing view C. This is this pillow right here with the like triangles colored blocks. So that's what we're going to do. So now The only pattern pieces that you will need is pattern piece number 3 and pattern piece number 5. Now, pattern piece number 5, you should have cut 4 of fabric and 4 of contrast fabric. Now, it's up to you what you want to use as your contrast fabric. But for pattern piece number 3, you only need to cut 1 because this will be the back of your pillow. All right. Now, I'm just going to move my pattern piece out of the way. Now, on this pillow, I am inserting a zipper. So one thing, I'm going to bring this pattern piece back. So like I showed you before, I went ahead and enlarged it by, I just went ahead and did 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and add that extra paper, went out 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and made my zipper. Now I want my zipper to be halfway in between. So what I did was I measured from end to end, marked my middle point. And then from this line, I know that my zipper is 12 inches. So I made sure that the 6 is in between the center and then made my points right here for 12 inches. So that's what I did for mine. Whatever size zipper that you want to use is completely up to you, but you could do the exact same thing for your zipper. Just measure out, mark the halfway point. Once you decide if it's going to be a 14-inch zipper, you need to put your 7 here and then mark top and bottom, 0 and 14. If you make 16, you would probably have a little problem because this is like a 16 by 16 inch pillow, but I will definitely either do a 12 or a 14 inch zipper. I would not go any further than a 14 inch zipper for these pillows, okay? Also, pattern piece number 5, because this is going to attach to pattern piece number 3, at the very bottom, I made a note that it's a zipper. I measured 5/8 of an inch seam allowance and made that marking as well. Now that I told you about where my zipper placement will be for this tutorial, let's go ahead and get into the sewing. So go ahead and move pattern piece number 3 out of your way. You're not going to need that just a second. We're going to start working on pattern piece number 5. You only need 4. So you're going to... So I have already pinned my pattern piece number 5 together. You should have a total of 8 pieces of fabric, 4 of each color, the 2 colors that you decided, or 2 fabrics that you decided, right? All right, so what you're going to do, that at this angle right here, there is a notch. You're going to pin at the notch, pin at the top, and pin at the bottom, okay? And then what you're going to do is go to the sewing machine and using a 1/2 of an inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and at the end. So you're going to back stitch at the beginning and at the end and sew this edge right here. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I went ahead and stitched the center where that notch is and I pressed it open, I know you're wondering why is this little peak right here not sewn. That's because of the zipper. So don't be concerned about that. It'll work out perfectly. Trust me. Okay. So the next thing you're going to do is with right sides together, you're going to take this one and place it over here. Just like that. And then you're going to do the same thing to the other side as well. Okay. Now, one thing that I want to mention is whatever side that you have that you're going to be making your zipper at, you need to be sure that they match up. Just like this side right here is where the zipper is going to be, right here. So make sure you match those 2 up and you're going to sew at 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Go ahead to the sewing machine and using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, back stitch at the beginning and at the end and press your seams open. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that we have sewn 1/4 to the other 1/4, now we have 2 halves, right? So now what you're going to do is take the top one, put it over the bottom, and with right sides together, we're going to pin all the way across this seam. Okay. Now, one thing I want to make sure is, you know, that you need to make sure that your seams are pressed open and you want to make sure that they match up. Reason being is because you don't want your triangle, diamond, whatever you want to call it, just looking off, okay? You don't want it to look off. So make sure you pin all the way across the length of your fabric. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my seams pinned, what I'm gonna do is go to the sewing machine and using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, I'm gonna backstitch at the beginning and at the end and press my seams open. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my entire front stitched, I stitched right here, the top to the bottom, and stitch at a 1/2 inch seam allowance. The only thing left for you to do is determine where you want your zipper. Okay, so once you determine where you want your zipper, you need to go ahead and get the back pattern piece, and with right sides together, I'm going to turn mine because I want my zipper at the bottom. And with right sides together, you're going to pin your back to your front. And then what you're going to do is, I know that it is 12 inches. So I made a little clip right here at 12 inches, and that tells me that that is where my the bottom of my zipper is going to be. So what I'm going to do is make sure you measure up 12 inches. So I'm just going to make another snip. So I'm just going to move my front out of the way quickly, and I'm going to measure from that clip. I'm going to measure up 12 inches and make another clip, okay? So one clip is to tell me, so this clip right here is to tell me that this is where I need to put the bottom of my zipper, and this one up here tells me I need to put the top portion of my zipper there, okay? Now, with right sides together, you can determine where you want your zipper at, but with right sides together, you're going to pin all the way around. So what you're going to do is pin all the way around, but leave that portion open where you will be, leave the bottom portion open where you will be creating your zipper, okay? So just pin the sides and the top, and then go to the sewing machine and use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, stitch all the way around, leaving this bottom portion where you're going to create your zipper open, okay? Go ahead to the sewing machine and do that now. All right, so now that you have went ahead and attached the front to the back at the side seams and the top, now this is where I'm going to put my zipper in. So that's why you see 2 clips here, and you see where I pressed it open. Now you can put interfacing to secure your zipper, but I'm not going to do that in this tutorial because this is just a zipper for a pillow. So no need to do that, right? All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to place the bottom portion of my zipper pull at the very bottom, and I'm going to pin. Now, if you have never seen my tutorial on how I sew on zippers, I will go ahead and put a link in so you could go to that tutorial, which was a top, but I put in invisible zippers the same way. However, this is not a invisible zipper. This is an exposed zipper, but it's pretty much the same thing where you're just gonna sew down one side, go across, and then sew up the other side. All right, so I've just finished pinning, making sure that your zipper is in the middle of your, where you pressed your seams open, okay? All right, so now that I have my zipper pinned in there pretty good, what I'm gonna do is go to the sewing machine, and I am going to definitely make sure that I sew using just basically base right across here, and then I'm gonna base up the other side. Go ahead and do that now. So now that I went ahead and sewn on my zipper, I went ahead and removed my basting stitch, opened it up, and made sure that my zipper stops where it needs to stop. Now what I'm gonna do is reach my hand in, make sure that you clipped your corners as well, reach your hand in and pull your pillowcase all the way out, and make sure that you take your point turner and poke out your corners, okay? So go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my pillowcase turned out, right? This is the front, this is the back, okay? Now, one thing, so if you notice, it's on the side right here, looking at it, but it could be, you know, anywhere that you want it. You could turn it this way and it could be at the bottom. That's completely up to you. It's a personal preference. Now, one thing I have to do is go ahead and top stitch right here to make sure that my zipper is secure, because all I did was baste it on. I need to make sure that I need to stitch closer to the edge in order to make sure that my zipper is nice secure. So I'm gonna make sure that I sew on my zipper very close to the edge like you would do. So I'm just gonna do very close to the edge all the way up and then across and then come back down. That's what I'm gonna do for my zipper because it's open right now. When I close it, it's gonna be a zipper at the bottom. Once I do that, I'm gonna make sure I tack the top portion and then give my pillowcase a good press, and I am all done. So you have just finished your second pillow in this series. So now that we finished our second one, let's go ahead and do the last pillow in this series. All right, so let's get into the last pillow in this tutorial, which is the one that I self-drafted. Now, what I did was I took the big pattern, which I'm going to show you here. So the one that we draft, I took that pattern, which I'm going to show you here. Right? Remember this one that I completely draft? What I did was I just basically traced out this one right here, 16 by 16 inch, because that's what I want. So I traced it out, the purple lines and everything, and came up with this one, okay? Now, also on this one, what I did, let me move this big pattern out the way for you. Also, what I did is I made my cross grain line and my grain line, okay? But when you cut your one piece out, now, you will be cutting two of these, right? So when you cut your pillow out, you will have a grain line right here, and you want to make sure that that's parallel to the selvage edge, okay? Now, you're probably looking at all of this stuff that I wrote on here or whatever. Each strip is about 2 7/8 inch apart all the way across. I also made sure to mark what colors I want. Now I'm going to show you what it looks like when you put your pieces together, okay? So when you put your pieces down, I'm going to show you what it looks like when you have all your strips together, okay? All right, so this is what it looks like when you have all your strips together, right? You only have this corner, which is going to be whatever color that you use. Now, I am using a solid black for my main piece, basically, okay? So what's gonna happen is the black is going to go down. I'm going to show you by putting this down. I'm going to move this off to the side quickly. I'm going to put my black down, and I'm just going to show you with this on top of it, okay? And I'm just going to fold this corner back just to show you what it will look like. Okay. And I'm going to fold the other corner back as well. Okay. So now, when everything is said and done and everything is attached, this is what your pillow will look like. You will have a black in the corner, and then you would have your stripes. That's why I told you that it is crucial that you make your lines somewhat diagonal, okay? So this is the pillow that we are getting ready to sew up. So let's go ahead and get right on into this tutorial. However, one thing that I want to mention is you want to mark where your stripes are going to go. So two things that you can do is you can mark it on your black fabric or whatever fabric that you have. Now I did create the pattern. That way it's easier for me to make sure that my stripes match up. Now, if you have not cut out your stripes, one thing I want to mention when you are cutting your stripes, right? When you get ready to cut on your fabric, let's say for instance that I'm going to be cutting this strip. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and fold up one portion of it and then use my rotary cutter and then I cut right there. Then I fold it down. I only have this part cut, I'm sorry. And then I fold the other side of that strip and then cut again. Once I do that, then I make sure that I cut around the sides of the strip. Okay, so that's what I did. Instead of just cutting every single line out, I just made sure to fold up my pattern piece and then cut that way. All right, now that we talked about that, what I want you to go ahead and do is you have two options. You can make your lines on your fabric, which is what I'm going to do. Because this is a dark fabric, or you could eyeball it. Whichever way you want to do it, you could do that now. So go ahead and place your strips onto your fabric now. All right, so I marked all the lines onto the right side of my fabric. When I wash it, it will go away, okay? So now what I'm going to do is go back to what I did, and I'm going to go ahead and place all my stripes onto my fabric now. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have all of my strips pinned to my fabric, my main fabric, what I'm going to do is go ahead and pin, okay? So you want to pin in the center of your fabric. And this will make sense once you do it. So go ahead and pin all your strips to your main fabric now. Now, one thing I also want to mention is your strips will go past the end of your fabric. That is a-okay. Don't worry about it because we will cut it off once you attach it with right sides together. So just go ahead and pin your strips to your fabric now. All right, so now that you have all of your strips pinned to your main fabric, you have two ways of doing this. You could sew close to the edge on both sides on all the strips, or you could sew just in the center of the strips on each strip. It's completely up to you how you want to do this. So take one of those options I just gave you. Either you could sew kind of top stitch along the sides of the side of your strips on both sides. You could do it that way, or sew in the center of your strips. It's completely up to you, but go to the sewing machine and sew on your strips now. All right, so now that you have your stripes onto your pillow, what you're going to do is trim off all the excess. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn mine over to where I can see the black. And what I'm going to do is just trim off the excess of the stripes that is showing, okay? Now, don't do what I'm doing and pressing down a little too hard on my rotary cutter. So just cut off those edges now. All right, so now that I have my seams trimmed down, the stripes, basically the excess fabric trimmed down, make sure you cut all of your loose threads to where you don't have any sticking up like I am doing now on mine. And after you do that, you should have your top looking like this. Now, what you're going to do is with right sides together, you're going to put the back, whatever you're using as your back fabric. I'm just using this nice graphic gray fabric that I purchased from Joann's in the keepsake department. So what I'm going to do is just pin that on the back onto right sides together. I'm going to pin it onto my fabric, and then I'm going to pin all the way around. Now, one thing that I want to mention about when you pin, if you are adding a zipper, you need whatever side that you're adding the zipper to, you need to sew that side seam at 5/8 of an inch. 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. All the rest of your seams will be a half of an inch. Okay. So now, because I know that I want the stripes this way, right? See, I'm going to pull it back. I want the stripes that way. So I'm going to put my zipper right here. Now my zipper is 12 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark 12 inches between the two. Now this is a 18 by 18 inch pillow. So to mark 12 inches, I want to make sure that I go 2 inches in on both sides. So I'm going to mark at the 16 and at the 2. Okay. Now, when I do that, I look and see how many inches is between the two. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So the 14 would be 12 inches from the 2. So I'm going to make another mark between the 3. So I'm going to go over from the 2 and go to the 3. And I'm going to put a pin there just to mark my 12 inches from the 3. Okay. And once you mark your 3 inches, you need to go down 12 inches from that 3-inch mark and put another pin there at that 12 inches. Or whatever side this is my 3, this is my 12. So whatever sides your zipper is, that's where you're going to go down at. Okay. Now, the reason why I have this open, all I'm going to do is make a snip. I'm going to make a snip right there at 3 and then make a snip right here at the 12. So make a snip at the 3 and then make one at the 15. All right. Now you can pin all the way around and then go to your sewing machine, and using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, you're just going to sew those 3 sides where your zipper is not going to be. Okay. Do not sew the side with your zipper just yet. Reason being is because you want to make sure that you pin on your zipper to that side seam before sewing it together. Now, what we can do is go ahead and do the zipper first and then pin all the way around. That's what I'm going to do. So the first thing I'm going to do is sew. I'm going to start at 1 notch. I'm going to start at the top. When I get to that notch, what I'm going to do is switch to a basting stitch and sew all the way up. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now I went ahead and sewn this area where the zipper is going to be. So basically I backstitch at the beginning, got to that notch. Once I got to the notch, I basted along that area where the zipper is going to be. Once I got to that second notch, I switched to a regular length stitch and then backstitch there at the notch and then sew all the way up. So now what we are looking at is something that looks like this, right? So what I'm going to do is go to my ironing station and press this seam open and prepare my zipper. Now, I have shown you how to do a zipper before. It's no different. It's just going to be an exposed zipper. So what you're going to do is go ahead and press this open, place your zipper. So the end of your zipper is going to be at 1 notch, which here's my notch, the bottom of your zipper there. And then you're just going to pin all the way up. Once you do that, you are going to install your zipper like you have done before. Go ahead and switch to not a invisible zipper foot, or you can use your regular zipper foot like I will be doing. And what you're going to do is base the zipper onto both sides of your zipper tape. Once you do that, flip it over, open up the stitching that you basted. Once you open up the stitching that you basted, you're just going to top stitch around that zipper area. Once you do that, I will meet you right back here at the cutting table so we could continue. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I have my zipper installed, I'm going to turn it to the right side, and then I'm going to look for that area where there are basting stitches, and I'm just going to open it up. So take your seam ripper, being careful not to cut into your fabric, opening up those stitches that are basting stitches now. Now that I have the area where my zipper is open, what we're going to do is go ahead and top stitch around the zipper area, okay? So top stitch about 1/4 of an inch away from the zipper area now. Being sure not to stitch onto your zipper area. So if you have any loose threads, you could go ahead and cut those off now like I am doing here. And then go to your sewing station or your sewing machine and go ahead and top stitch around the zipper area now. Go ahead and do that now. All right, so now that I top stitched the zipper area of my pillow, you see the zipper is nice and done. Now what you need to do is, with right sides together, what you're going to do is go ahead and close out your pillow. So you're just going to sew all the way around your pillow using 1/2 inch seam allowance. So just pin all 3 sides and go to your sewing machine and sew around your pillow using 1/2 inch seam allowance. Back stitch at the beginning and at the end. So go ahead and pin, back stitch at the beginning, and also go all the way around. So you're going to start right here, go all the way down, pivot at that corner, sew across. When you get to this corner, pivot again, sew all the way down and back stitch at the end. Once you do that, turn your pillow out, give it a good press, and you are all done with your pillowcase. All right, so I have my pillowcase completely sewn, the sides and the top. This is actually the top and the sides. My zipper is at the bottom. So now what I'm going, and oh, I forgot to tell you, I went ahead and clipped my, trimmed my corners as well. I did not cut through the stitching. So now what I'm gonna do is turn it right side out. Make sure you use your point turner to poke out any of your corners if you need to, which I just like to have a good point on my corners. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. All that's left for you to do is go ahead and give your pillowcase a good press as well. So just finish poking out your corners if you need to, like I do, like I'm doing here now. And then poke out this one as well. And then your pillowcase is all done and it's ready to go. So here is the front. That's the front, and then the back. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on the pillowcase. I have given you 3 different pillowcases that you can go ahead and get you some 16 by 16 or 18 by 18. So this is the one that we self-drafted, basically just using the pattern and then just creating a zipper to put to open and close your, to basically just change them out. So you can use this pattern as many times as you want, create it for Christmas gifts, Valentine's Day, Black History Month, whatever you would like to do with this pattern. Just get you some different scraps, pieces of fabric, and then place it onto your pillow. So this is the one that we self-drafted, which I love how this came out. The second pillow that we did was this one right here, which was the color, which was like a, I guess you could call it kind of like a color block pillowcase. I love it. This is that one right here. And then the first one that we created was a simple square pillowcase. This is a 18 by 18 and the other two are 16 by 16. Well, that's it for the tutorial. I'll hope to see you in the next tutorial. All right, so there you have it. You just finished sewing that first project as part of the Sew What series. So don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you are notified every time I upload a new video. So I'll catch you in the next video. And as always, keep sewing.